Welcome to Song Wat, Bangkok's home of the young and hip. It's here on a tiny street behind the famous Chinatown where big things are happening, new ideas taking shape that'll drive the next generation of the region's culture, with an impact soon to be felt on arts, music, and of course, cuisine, as here is where chefs are taking risks, introducing wild concepts and blending the flavors of old and new. Today on OTR, we're exploring this unique district to understand the city's subculture and how it connects to similar movements all over the world. We're meeting the people at the forefront, diving into the fascinating stories and following Song Wat for the next half year to find out what happens when the word gets out. And everyone learns the name of a place anonymous until right now. I remember the first time that we were, when we read the article about Song Wat, and we came down here, we're like, oh yeah, we've been here before. And what made us recognize this is that we'd parked under one of these gigantic paintings, and it was, I think, in the Sriracha shoot. Our driver just parked us here, and that was the only time I'd been here. And I remember thinking, what is this crazy place where all the buildings are just like covered in murals, and you see every time we come down here, there's some kind of arts festival or photography festival or something going on. At 40 years old, I almost feel like I'm not cool enough to be in this neighborhood sometimes. All right, there's a full day ahead of us and an entire street to explore. But we need to explain that article, the one I just referenced, because it's going to come up a lot. It was the coming out party for Song Wat, its introduction not just to the global stage, but even to the rest of this city, because until the end of 2023, pretty much no one here had even heard of this neighborhood. That includes me, until Daria sent me a link to a TimeOut feature listing the world's 40, quote, coolest neighborhoods. There was one entry from Bangkok, and I remember trying to guess if it was going to be Ari or Talad Noi or any of the other iconic districts. No, it was Song Wat, which brought up the question, what and where the heck is Song Wat? Well, according to the magazine, it's a chilled-out area tucked between Chinatown and the river, a place with art galleries and fashionable retail, Instagrammable cafes, and even a beef noodle shop owned, and I quote, by a leading food influencer. And yeah, that adds up, since it seems like influencer might be the primary demographic of the people hanging out in Song Wat. This is most definitely not my comfort zone. But thankfully, here it didn't take long to find something that is. Because Song Wat isn't just known for street art and fashion, it's also the city's best destination for one humble dish, Fishball Noodles, made here since as far back as anyone can remember.
Ránก๋วยเตี๋ยวต้นตำรับ 80 ปี ชื่อริมเล่าซาถนนทรงวาดนะคะทำมาสมัยคุณพ่อจนรุ่นลูกปัจจุบันนะคะชิ้นปลาทำเองคนก็นิยมชมชอบก๋วยเตี๋ยวลูกชิ้นปลาขึ้นชื่อบะหมี่แห้งแล้วก็สูตรโบราณถึงมาเป็นแหล่งท่องเที่ยวของปัจจุบันนี้แล้วก็ชื่นชอบบะหมี่แห้งบะหมี่น้ำแล้วก็มีลูกชิ้นปลาหลากหลายให้เลือกทานกันแล้วก็ได้ทำออกงานถวายพระองค์ท่านทุกพระองค์ที่เสวยมาแล้วนะคะแล้วก็เป็นเกียรติที่ทุกท่านแขกที่มาทานก๋วยเตี๋ยวที่นี่ไม่ว่าเป็นคนต่างชาติคนจีนคนญี่ปุ่นก็นิยมมาทานแล้วก็ให้เกียรติให้ชื่นชมและมองว่าเป็นก๋วยเตี๋ยวชิ้นปลาที่อร่อยนะคะ
This is a place called Lim Lao Sam. It's been open since the late 1930s. Or in other words, it was here for more than 8 decades before Song Wat became a trendy destination. They've been in this spot through every generation of the neighborhood, witnessing the changes that happened all around while themselves, they haven't really changed anything.
เป็นแหล่งท่องเที่ยวสำหรับคนรุ่นใหม่ที่มาทานก๋วยเตี๋ยวแล้วก็ช้อปปิ้งแล้วก็เป็นศูนย์รวมที่ของวัฒนธรรมของย่านเยาวราชที่มีร้านอาหารอร่อยขึ้นชื่อนะคะแล้วก็ที่นี่ต้นตำรับถนนทรงวาดลูกชิ้นปลาเจ้าเก่า80 ปีนะคะนี่เป็นลูกสาวแล้วก็ทำมาสมัยคุณพ่อลูกชิ้นปลานะคะแล้วก็80 ปีแล้วก็ไม่มีสารกบฏมีทำถวายพระองค์ท่านนะคะแล้วก็นายกทุกสมัยนะคะแล้วก็คนต่างชาตินิยมมาทานแนะนำเมนู Noodle Fishball Dry น้ำหวานแล้วก็บะหมี่แห้งต้นตำรับแล้วก็บะหมี่น้ำนะคะลูกชิ้นปลา
So we were going to film a little bit more of the preparation process, and the lady behind the cart here got very angry because Ian, who's filming, has a bowl of his noodles that she said was getting cold, and he has to eat it right now before it's not perfect. Homemade egg noodles, fish balls, which are actually made in-house, and that's it. Small portions, which is exactly what we're looking for, but I understand we have a lot to film today, and I probably shouldn't get in the habit of stopping everywhere we see, but I am hungry, and we're in Song Wat. If our purpose in coming here today is to explore Bangkok's hottest neighborhood, starting with an old fishball shop might seem off-topic. But the truth is, this is actually very important to everything here in the neighborhood. In the old days, Song Wat houses made fish balls by hand and delivered them across the city. That was the neighborhood's identity, a food supply center. In fact, that was the entire reason the road exists, and it's the rise and fall of that industry that brings us to today. The story of Song Wat begins in 1892 after half of Chinatown was destroyed in a fire. In the aftermath, King Rama V decided to rebuild the district in various segments, with the area closest to the river identified for warehouses and trade. The king drew a line on a map exactly 1.196 kilometers long, and declared it to be a spot designated for wholesale, and since he never gave the new road a name, it would be referred to simply as Song Wat, or the line drawn by the king. The residents of the alley were almost entirely Thai Chinese, with a small cluster of southern Muslims who lived around the Luang Kocha Itzahak Mosque. The Muslims were primarily in the gemstone business, and the Chinese traded in food, selling fish balls as well as imported products, like seeds sent from China. One of those Song Wat seed vendors, by the way, would be run by two brothers named Xie, who would eventually grow into other sectors, and today their company is known as Charoen Popkand, or CP Group, Thailand's largest private enterprise. Bangkok Bank also started in Song Wat as a moneylender giving loans to the food importers, and Thai Bev began here as well, initially a liquor distributorship run by the son, of course, of a Song Wat fishball vendor. The rise of the neighborhood would be meteoric, but it's the fall that's why this story matters. The beginning of the end for Song Wat started as far back as the 1950s, when the new container port would open, and Song Wat's piers and warehouses no longer had a purpose. With trade moving away, so did the big companies, like CP Group and Bangkok Bank. There were still textile vendors, but those would disappear around the 1980s, with the emergence of Pratunam. By the end of that decade, most of the storefronts on the street had shuttered, and as the older generation dwindled, young people raised here moved on to find work elsewhere, and that was the state of Song Wat as recently as 2021. Now, it's often said that gentrifying neighborhoods are a tragedy. Old culture destroyed and replaced by trendy cafes and hangouts for young people. But that misses one very important factor, which is that these hotspots almost always appear in places already abandoned and on the verge of demolition, which is the case with Song Wat, and honestly all the, quote, counterculture enclaves you've probably ever heard of. From the US to Europe to Asia, whenever a new community forms seemingly out of nothing, It's generally because so-called starving artists and young creative people find a part of a city where the rent has hit rock bottom, because all the industry's gone, and all that's left are the shells of buildings fallen into disrepair. Williamsburg, Brooklyn was once the site of old factories, abandoned by the 1940s and occupied by squatters, refugees, and immigrants from Latin America. Then came a wave of organized crime and a police crackdown, and with the building set for demolition, well, in the 1980s they became a refuge for writers and poets priced out of Manhattan when rent prices took off. Prenzlauer and Kreuzberg, Berlin were Jewish settlements on opposite sides of the Spree River, emptied during the Holocaust and bombed by allies during the war. They'd both sit largely abandoned, the shells of long-destroyed buildings and factories finding new life after the wall came down, hosting the raves that would come to define electronic music. And Beijing's Hutong revival began after 2008, when most of the city's old stone structures were torn down in the lead-up to the Olympics, to show the world a new and gleaming capital. As it relates to Song Wat, well, here's what happened. With the commerce long gone, Song Wat was left to fall into disrepair. The street would be forgotten until it was noticed by local filmmakers and photographers who fell in love with the ghostly span of Song Wat as a backdrop for production. The district was something of a blank canvas, and that brought street artists who added their graffiti to the vacant walls and neglected shop fronts. Fast forward all the way to the 2020s, and with COVID shutting down travel and production, some of those artists and filmmakers decided to move in, broke and out of money to pay rent somewhere else. By 2022, a few of those new residents set up businesses catering to each other. Cafes and restaurants, studios and art galleries, and in the blink of an eye, Song Wat had been reborn as the city's new creative center. It happened quickly. So quickly that by the time the TimeOut article was published, the neighborhood was already developing. So to get a handle on the transformation, we've arranged a meeting with one of those pioneers, the first wave, to rediscover the alley that was once drawn by the king. So who are you?
I'm Pixie, just Pixie.
No, but I mean, so tell me your story. What brings you to this part of Bangkok?
Actually, I used to be like photographer. So what I like to do is like scout for a new location. So I shot in Song Wat first time maybe like 12 years ago. Yeah, I still have the video of that I shot with my friends. We're trying to shot like the fashion film. Yeah, and we didn't like specific to come to this road. That time we don't even know what it's called. Yeah, but it's pretty. So we shot in front of the toy store. Yeah, it's like a wholesale store. Which like it's kind of pretty and I remember this road like perfectly. So if I come around here, maybe Chalen Kung or like Yawarat, Chinatown, I will like come by this because like it's near the river. Also they have like some spot that nobody know, but you can walk to see we can walk and chill at the by the river.
But that was in general what this was, is that, you know, you can walk to like north of Chinatown now.
Yes.
And you see those streets where it's almost like Pratunam, where you don't walk into the store to buy something because they're selling wholesale. This was kind of a wholesale area,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, when did you start seeing it change?
Start seeing it change is like just like few years ago after COVID. Actually, like just like 2 or 3 years ago, that this place. I mean, you can see that after COVID, we have like less tourists. So it's just only like few tourists and people looking for some place, not like specific place for tourists. So I saw like tourists, they came here and they feel like, oh, they are really like tourists. They're not they're not like people that like to come to party and go to Khao San Road, but they are traveler, I mean, not tourist, like traveler. and they came around here and staying around here, and they enjoy the vibe. Also, the architect of this area is like pretty cool. I think it's like the most cool like architecture of our Bangkok.
After falling in love with Song Wat as a backdrop for his work, Pixie and his friends in the filmmaking community kept coming back. And with rent prices collapsing after COVID, a few of them moved in and started opening businesses. Pixie would set his up in February 2023, 10 years after making that first video, renting a shop front and deciding to do, as he would tell BK Magazine, stoner food for friends with the munchies. He settled on poutine, the national dish of Canada, but since he's never been to Canada and wasn't sure how the dish was supposed to taste, he just leaned in and called his shop Bad Poutine. And before long, he had plenty of new neighbors just as irreverent and just as popular. Places like this one of the first to set up here in Song Wat, and a perfect metaphor for the neighborhood itself. It's called FV, founded by Opas Changkam, another member of the filmmaking community. Except Opas isn't a videographer. He specializes in animation and visual effects. And the focus of this business is also very Song Wat. Its signature is royal Thai snacks made with obscure fruits and vegetables, or FV, which would otherwise be discarded by rural farmers.
Okay, it is there. Lucky.
Oh my god.
It's good. I love this place. It's like randomly came here by accident and found that place, and I don't know what happened. Yeah. The cup. Look. I don't know what is this place. Nobody say anything. It's like behind somewhere, and they like.
This is like it used to be a
or like a house. I
like
think.
a church or a school or something
Maybe.
like that, maybe?
Yeah. The arc is like crazy.
These bricks are handmade, right?
Mm.
Ever since Pixie and his filmmaking crew started setting up shop in Song Wat, and especially since the TimeOut piece, it's become something of a game for his friends to wander around the neighborhood every few days and see which old buildings have become construction sites, which houses and warehouses abandoned for generations have begun to take on new life, in a way the direct result of those first arrivals who made Song Wat cool. You know, right now this almost feels like a movie set.
Mm.
You know, this almost feels like this could just be. There's a sense of pride in Song Wat's explosion into relevance. Almost overnight, this was becoming a must-visit part of one of the world's most visited cities. Somewhere cool and a place where struggling artists like Pixie have found not just a stable income, but have left behind footprints, made an impact on a place they love.
There's like developing every places. You can turn right, turn left, and then you can see only like the construction.
The pace of development in Song Wat since the end of COVID has been breakneck, with not just new businesses moving in, but families here all along joining the fray, turning their downstairs into shops and restaurants and breathing new life into a district all of a sudden finding a new identity.
You can see that like it's a mixed culture. It's like a old building and a new building. They have like people that never like renovate their building at all, and the people that they already like renovate their building and like doing the like business. So this is like a good mix of like Thailand.
And you look around, people are just so cool, and I feel
Yeah.
so not cool when I come here.
Yeah, so So
I'm a 40-year-old man wearing flannel.
That's like even like mixed like with the old building and the street art. There's so many graffitis here, so many like poster that they put it on because like it used to be like nobody care about the old building before,
Right.
and then like the street artists they came here and they're like, oh, that's like old empty space that's so cool. I just like spray on it,
right.
and it's turned out to be like really cool though.
Lead the way. Tell us where we're going.
Yeah, it's almost there.
Okay.
Yeah. Here.
You'll see in the footage kind of what this was, but like, you know, what it was kind of turning into. This was just during COVID, all the old warehouses closed and it became like snapped up by artists, and it just turned into like the kind of art community.
So it's like
filmmakers, mostly like
pretty recent.
very recent. And that's why I kind of did that story of like, let's get it on tape because it's going to gentrify like imminently. And so now we're just coming to check if it has. The first time we filmed in Song Wat, it was never intended to make the channel. Our shoot in December 2024 was a way to break in a new videographer and spend a day walking around a funky part of Bangkok. The footage we taped got uploaded to a hard drive and forgotten, as we moved on to make other long-planned videos and traveled around much of Southeast Asia, telling stories that felt important, with a day on that tiny street something of an afterthought. But half a year later, it felt like my social media was always full of new stuff opening in Song Wat, and it was obvious that when we'd been here to film, whatever it felt like might be happening had happened. And all of a sudden, that old footage was something irreplaceable. So this is what I was the most excited about and the most afraid of. And when I say afraid of, all I mean is like, when I asked a couple of friends who've been down here, what's changed since the last time we were shooting in Song Wat? The first thing everybody says is there's an entire new street. And you see like all of these businesses are new, but in this alley, this did not exist 6 months ago. I remember a long time ago, a friend of mine who used to write a column for a Chinese newspaper referred to our neighborhood, in the middle of its own renaissance, as not a place in a geographic sense, but a moment in time. I guess the truth is the heyday of communities built by those on the margins of society never lasts very long. I mean, if you walk around Williamsburg or Prenzlauer or the Beijing Hutongs today, you'd have to try really hard to imagine that once upon a time, these were the centers of counterculture and creativity. And when it comes to Song Wat, well, whatever we'd recorded, unintentionally, was perhaps the only record in existence of a brief explosion, a shockingly fleeting moment which had come and gone in the blink of an eye. So we figured maybe that footage wasn't a waste after all, and instead, something a lot more important. So let's get back to the story. This is like thumbnail shot, kind of cool. Yeah, all right.
Come on, like chai.
I'm just gonna ruin it by standing in front of it. That's the one problem with our thumbnails is I'm in it, and that ruins every good picture. After Pixie and the filmmakers moved into Song Wat in early 2023, the next wave to arrive were others in the creative scene. Places like art galleries that might not turn a massive profit but thrive wherever there's cheap rent and a vibrant community of like-minded people. That's especially true in districts where the buildings themselves are works of art in their own right. Like this one, a structure that since the 1890s has lived two complete lives prior to the new incarnation. First, it was a workshop making gravestones for Teochew Chinese, destined for the Wat Dawn Cemetery. And then when Song Wat transitioned to making food products, this was an ice cream factory. And the new tenants fell in love in part because the old ghosts are still here, with the upstairs including a hidden room where workers in the 70s and 80s would stay fit practicing Muay Thai. The gallery's known as Tars Unlimited, and it's co-owned by Shireen, born in Australia but with roots here, and Pierre, half French, half Mexican, and long a resident of Bangkok. An hour ago, you knew OTR, the channel.
Yes.
And now with no warning, you find yourself in a video.
And I'm happy.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Pierre,
Yes,
So you are the owner of a co-owner
with Shirin over there.
of an art gallery.
Yes. Tars
I
Unlimited.
just walked in here. Tell me what this is.
So Tars Unlimited is Interzone. We don't call ourselves a gallery. So the idea of Interzone is that, as you see, we are wide open. We don't have these glass doors. We want to kind of absorb the city. So we combine with contemporary art and also the history and heritage of the neighborhood. So we're located next to the Luangkosha Mosque, which is a kind of a landmark in Song Wat. And we wanted to kind of, leverage from this neighborhood and communicate and dialogue with the audience. The audience can be curious, but also the people who goes to pray to the mosque, and also the artists who come to interact with us and share with the art.
So I asked this question when we first started talking a few minutes ago, when we sat down for our first bowl of fishball noodles, I asked the same question to the owner of the shop. How would you explain Song Wat? It's an open-ended question, but first of all, before we even talk about this business, how do you explain Song Wat?
Song Wat, I don't know if I'm going to do the best description, but it has a rich heritage, and of course you have a lot of different architecture that describe the diversity of this area, which was mostly done by exchange, I believe. But today we still have this. It's extremely diverse, but it becomes a kind of cultural vacuum cleaner here. You know, it's like absorbing a lot of things, and you see a lot of things happening in Song Wat on a small scale. It's quite condensed and it's interesting. It's a little bombshell of culture, and kind of love that.
Okay, how do I ask this question? I lived in Beijing when I think it was the coolest place in the world to live for a short time.
Yes.
Like 2014, 2015, it was just starting to change. So we were surrounded by these, it was called the hutongs, and it's 800-year-old buildings that all of a sudden, people still live the way that they always did, but there are art galleries and coffee shops and microbreweries and just cool people doing cool things and creative, everything. And the problem is, do you know the game Whack-A-Mole?
Yes, I know this one.
It kind of becomes like that, where eventually it changes. It was Berlin, it was Brooklyn. It's you can name these places around the world where you have these moments. I don't know what Song Wat will look like in 15 years, but right now it's at the beginning of that moment. Would you see it that way?
I see it that way. I feel a little bit guilty because you mentioned about the galleries that were always kind of the precursor. I mean, at the first before gentrification really happens. So, but yeah, we are definitely at a moment of shift for the neighborhood. And my friend Pig here has been here before, and he has seen this before also on a smaller scale. But it's extremely fast now. It's accelerating.
When Pierre says they've seen the changes that happened to a neighborhood before, well, he means it. This is not their first location. Tars Unlimited used to be in Tonglor when that was the new, funky, and creative district on the fringes of Bangkok, until it became so popular that the prices went up and they had to move out. But that was okay because by then, well, the artists were already long gone, along with everything else that had once made Tonglor, well, kind of like Song Wat. There's a pattern that follows hotspots like these all over the world. Young people, rebels, and those outside the mainstream congregate somewhere they can form a community, bringing arts and music and radical ideas somewhere they're not in the way. As more and more arrive, a new enclave takes shape, with food and drinks catered to those who live there, stuff meant for the young generation, and with the benefit of cheap rent, vendors can take chances, try wild ideas. And for the folks who populate these districts, well, the weirder, the better. Before long, these new businesses attract attention. Good reviews, magazine articles, YouTube videos. This brings more new tenants, and with an increase in demand, well, the rent goes up too. With more venues comes more exposure, and this brings chain stores, investors and speculators, and suddenly the families who'd lived there before the change, well, they're gone. Buildings stripped down to the pegs and rebuilt for those willing to pay top dollar to live somewhere cool. The artists and musicians and cooks who started the movement get priced out, and the new tenants don't want noise outside their million-dollar condos, so there go the bars, the live houses, and the street food, even the stuff there all along. In a blink, it's gone, and the people who lit the fire are back in the wind, searching for another spot to find each other and build a new home, even if it won't last long. It happens more often than you might imagine. I've lived it twice. Once in the Beijing hutongs during the short window when bars, restaurants, installations, hell, a sword fighting club, and a French cheese shop all existed side by side, with life uninterrupted as it had been for 800 years. Then the second time was in Shenzhen, in a random neighborhood you've never heard of, that for a brief moment might have been the coolest place in the entire world. Or at least that's how it felt if you were there. Think about the most vibrant counterculture neighborhoods you've ever heard of. I guarantee that every single one of those places is done and has been for a very long time. The average studio apartment in Williamsburg, Brooklyn now costs $3,854 a month, 3 times more for retail or restaurant space, which obviously prices out any business without major financial backing. It's only slightly cheaper to rent an apartment in Prenzlauer, Berlin. That is, if you can find a place at all, as since the late 1990s, every inch of available space has been snapped up by the rich and glamorous. And the glory days of the hutongs came to an end in one fell swoop when in 2017, Xi Jinping ordered the wholesale renovation of the district, every single vibrant alley, quote, cleaned up, to drive out people like me. But the thing is, once you come to terms with the fact that this never lasts for long, all it does is make you appreciate how cool it is to find yourself in one of those hotspots at just the right moment in time. Can you tell me how you feel seeing this neighborhood become so developed now?
Oh,
It's exciting, yeah?
yeah, I feel like in the past, like back to 5 years ago, this area is completely like empty and it's so scary at night. And a lot of like customer, when they stay here, they always ask like, is it safe? Is it safe, this area? And then we like, yeah, is it safe? But we don't like sure because I be here, but I feel safe, but people don't feel safe. Yeah, but now it's just like people knew this is Song Wat, so yeah, people like doesn't feel like it's unsafe anymore.
When the sun sets in Song Wat, well, that means finding a place overlooking the river. Like this one, Hostel Irby, the first modern business to set up on this street all the way back in 2018. When Hostel Irby found this spot, they just wanted somewhere cheap for budget tourists headed to Chinatown, but then they saw the view. Of all the stories of the transformation of Song Wat, maybe the craziest is that it didn't happen sooner, and that the building survived long enough to gentrify. The neighborhood is right next to the water, literally on the Chao Phraya River, and all around everything else has been redeveloped into luxury hotels and condos. But Song Wat got lucky, and when new tenants moved in, they intended to keep it that way. A few local business owners, including Hostel Irby, gathered together and came up with a plan. To protect their new sanctuary, they would have to make destruction impossible, and the best way to do that would be to make Song Wat famous. Hell, world famous. Somewhere everyone who came to Bangkok would want to see. That way, the wrecking ball would have to stay away. In 2022, that collective, now known by the name of Made in Song Wat, put their ideas into action, producing merchandise and organizing community events, and the next year, releasing their first guidebook, unveiled at a high-profile event attended by the Bangkok governor. By the end of that year, Made in Song Wat boasted more than 60 members. The neighborhood saw more new arrivals, and their promotion had caught the eye of bloggers and influencers, and of course, TimeOut Magazine.
Everyone, I'm Kong. I'm been living these areas around 7 years, so I feel this area is like home. So we got like perfect view here with the riverside, cheap hostel, good area, and good people.
Yeah, there's a five-star hotel kind of view.
Yeah, and yeah, we also have like good drinks at the bar too. Yeah, so welcome to Song Wat.
With the success of Made in Song Wat, this neighborhood became an in-demand destination, and rent prices increased. Many of the local residents, the owners of the rundown shopfronts, well, they capitalized, jumping at the chance to earn an unexpected payday from new tenants. But not all of the Song Wat natives chose that path. There were a few who saw this as a chance to join the cool people too, to be a part of the exciting new wave by trying out their own ideas that just 3 years ago might have felt like a fantasy. Like these two who, in a spark of inspiration, gave up their own careers to come home and open a shop selling gyoza and making, well, for some reason, making fuzzy pencils. How long have you been open in this location?
It's about 1 year.
Okay, so if somebody we're doing a story on Song Wat. If somebody has never been to Song Wat before, explain to me, what is Song Wat?
Song Wat is a local wholesale place for the agriculture. And in the past, the thing that export from abroad coming here first and going to spread to another place in Thailand. And for now, almost all the people, the local people who live here is old one. And the young generation, they study outside and they don't want to do the same thing as their ancestor. So some going to work out of the house and the house is closed. And you can see some is the new business. Just the coffee shop. And some of the restaurant.
So this is you. You are the young generation who wants to not do what your family did.
Actually, we are the young generations, but we didn't live here. My father, my dad, when he married, he moved out. And he didn't continue the business of the house. He just go to work with a company. But when our grandparents died, the house is closed. And then we just think that if we still close the house will be destroyed.
So this is your family's house?
Yes. And then so we open our house
to breathing.
And then to have the house breathing and do small business.
Are you two family?
Yes, my little sister, I the elder sister.
So what was your family's story? If you don't mind my asking, what did your family do when they lived in this neighborhood? They were in trade.
Yes, they import.
So they're Chinese.
They're Chinese.
Yeah.
Who
born in China.
Born in China and
coming here.
Come here, and then he import the milk powder and also sugars from abroad, and then sell to other
wholesale.
shop.
Yeah.
I think for us, it's really exciting that so many tourists to come and to see our area.
In the new way.
In the new
not
way.
the way in the past.
Yes, because in the past, people come to buy something, to buy the wholesale, just dry onion, dry garlic, or peanut.
A sort of peanut.
Other agriculture products. But at this time, people go to see our
Culture.
And this is I can see that I can say that this is the residential area, but they will change to tourist area.
Are all three of us in the frame, by the way?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, that's fine. can you step back just a little bit? And then when I call your name, can you just kind of jump in here and just kneel down like right here? Like just kind of come into the picture. Okay.
Or you want him to grab a chair and come in and sit? Yeah, I can like bring that chair.
Oh no, I just meant this to be. I like that how that was kind of rough and unscripted last one. So I'm gonna try that one more time, but shorter. I'm gonna ask you the same question. Let's just be a little shorter about why it's called Bad Poutine.
Okay. Okay, so Al first.
This is just to take two of the same one.
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, and 1.
Should I just walk in here or jump in?
Aren't you in film? How do you miss your cue? With the sun down and a bag of takeaway dumplings, our attention turned to finding the rest of our dinner. And where else could we go but Bad Poutine, Pixie's incredible Song Wat institution? The dish as it's served here might be inauthentic, but when it tastes this good, that doesn't really matter. French fries, cheese curds, some homemade pulled pork, or other options like grilled steak or pastrami, consumed on a folding chair with an ice-cold bottle of beer, the sound of the river just a few steps away, and well, it's easy to feel drawn into the magic of Song Wat. There's nothing to me that is more our own experience of Song Wat than coming down here and sitting at Bad Poutine and having a bowl of good poutine, and now this is your cue.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hello.
Fancy seeing you here, unscripted. A few months ago, Pixie decided to expand his stake in Song Wat, setting up a speakeasy cocktail bar above Bad Poutine. He'd give the bar the name Bukowski in honor of the poet Charles Bukowski, the noted chronicler of those on the fringes of society, just like the folks who've made Song Wat home. And while outside the neighborhood might be drawing crowds from all over, well, in here it's very much still a community, by and for the people who built all of this together. There are a lot of similarities between neighborhoods that gentrify. There's usually some history, a past that gives color to the landscape. There are the creative people who make it home and bring a spirit of freedom and energy. And at least in Bangkok, there's one man who always seems to show up at just the right moment. Or maybe the moment follows him. His name is Pongswang Kunprasop, better known as Pongswang Chup. Note Pongswang, or Dudesweet, after the parties he introduced all the way back in 2002. The man himself is a Bangkok nightlife legend, maybe the Bangkok nightlife legend. And the game of whack-a-mole you need to play to find the next awesome area, well, he's been at it for decades. His iconic Misha Cheap revolutionized Khao San Road. Teens of Thailand breathed life into Soy Nana, and guess what? He's at it again, with a new venue called The National right next to Bad Poutine in the middle of Song Wat. This is a really unique area. Why did you choose Song Wat?
Because I heard it's happening and there are many new business started, open, and if you walk from the beginning of the street, you see there are many places is under construction. So I guess in a month or two, we could probably have more than 10 shops open. And I like the vibe here. You know, it's very neighborhood-ish. And it's almost similar like when I started Teams of Thailand in Soi Nana. It's like that quiet, simple, beautiful buildings. I have history.
How would you explain Song Wat to somebody who's never been here before?
It's beautiful street. It is beautiful street. The river on the back, not many people notice that. And it's funny that Yawarat is one of the most famous roads in Bangkok, but not many people know that there's another parallel road with this one. So I would say, it's very historical. Dates back since like 200 years ago, since King Rama V. And so every step you walk, the story is the unique style of building that mix between Chinese, Western, and Thai. Just architect alone is interesting enough.
Do you by any chance know the story of this building, where you are?
Oh yeah, I know this. My building is the first place that the first distributor of Nestle in Thailand, that in the 50s, and all the milk that's sent to the fancy hotel is start from here.
Because you're from Bangkok originally, you've seen how much the city has changed. You are what, 28 years old, 30 years old?
18.
18 years old. You've seen how much the city has changed, right?
Right.
In your hope in 10 years, because there's good development and bad development. Things can change in a lot of different ways. And this is still riverfront property. It's a gold mine. It's a good area. What is your hope for what Song Wat looks like with the right kind of culture, the right kind of people moving in, the right kind of community? What can this look like at its best?
What I hope it's not gonna end up like Ari. I live in Ari, and it used to be, small shops and business, and then it's nice, cheap, fun, and then suddenly got taken over. What is that word? Gentrification. So hopefully, this street is not going to end up like that, because when that thing happened, it happened very quickly. So I hope my contract is 3 years. So I hope within 3 years still good.
เราก็ยังดั้งเดิมยังเหมือนเดิมนะคะคือปิดไปตรงที่ว่าเดี๋ยวนี้เป็นถนนสายคนเดินเป็นแหล่งที่ก็สตรีทวอลสตรีทที่ว่าคนวัยรุ่นใหม่จะมาถ่ายรูปแล้วดูตึกบ้านเรือนที่ยังอนุรักษ์เหมือนเดิมแต่มีอาหารเพิ่มเติมที่อร่อยยังคงอยู่ที่นี่เส้นเดิมย่านนี้ก็คือร้านก๋วยเตี๋ยวริมเล่าซายังคงเดิมสมัยคุณพ่อสืบทอดมาถึงปัจจุบันแล้วก็บ้านเรือนแถวนี้ก็รีโนเวทมาเป็นร้านอาหารเพื่อไปให้คนได้มาลองลิ้มชิมอาหารแต่ถ้ามาย่านนี้จริงๆจะต้องแนะนำขึ้นชื่อต้นตำรับลูกชิ้นปลาที่นี่
One thing I can see already, even though we just got here, is that it seems like everyone who's setting up businesses in Song Wat at least is trying to kind of fit the vibe of the neighborhood. We even have the artwork, the kind of fake graffiti on the outside of the 7-Eleven, which I don't think I've ever seen before. Usually on OTR, the stories we tell follow a similar structure. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. But in the case of Song Wat, there's no obvious way to wrap this up neatly because the end is still very much up in the air. Where all of this goes from here is anyone's guess, but maybe I shouldn't be so pessimistic. When those old districts changed in Brooklyn, Berlin, Beijing, well, in the aftermath of gentrification, the businesses that were there at the forefront rode the wave to large-scale success. The people who owned the land saw their property values increase, and neighborhoods slated for demolition are today household names. But more than that, even if the artists and radicals had to eventually move on, every time they find each other and create one of these singularities, well, it moves the goalposts forward on our mainstream culture, our acceptance of new ideas and new concepts, and it paves the way for people once on the fringes of society to see their own communities expand. There are, of course, drawbacks to gentrification, and without hard work and shared responsibility, there's always the risk of everything going sideways. But for every story about residents displaced by, quote, progress, there are just as many where the benefit can be visible in a direct and quantifiable way. The first time we came to film in December of last year, we missed out on trying one of the neighborhood's oldest restaurants, a Chinese Thai place said to make some of the city's best braised goose. It was an institution in the days when this was an old trading hub, but over the years it's seen its business dwindle. And on the day we came to film, they weren't even open. But a few weeks later, with all eyes on Song Wat, well, 3 generations after setting up in this spot, they earned their first listing in the Michelin Guide, and now their old tables are always full. I guess the point is this. Song Wat, as it existed in the 1890s, is gone. But the truth is it was already gone when all the development started. And as this all changes, well, all we can do is remind ourselves that this was never about a place in a geographic sense. Just a moment in time. All right, so with Tiana, the owner of Nuri Chestnut Ice Cream, and I can't evaluate this because I haven't tried it yet, but I walked past it and I'm like, I have to try this. It's our first time in Song Wat since December last year. Yeah. How have you seen the neighborhood change in 6 months?
I would say it's changed a lot. It's like since I would say I live in here for my whole life, so I've seen like how the things change on the Song Wat Road, because like in the past I would say it was so quiet. It was just a normal road that like people would like just like walk past and like just ignore, like just like a normal local area. Because like I would say about like 2 to 3 years ago, people would didn't know like what is a Song Wat Road, it's like where is it? I was like I have to explain that I live near the Chinatown. So I would say in like 2 to 3 past year, everyone like knows like more like about like Song Wat Road, that is like the vintage, more like a vintage town that people were doing like import stuff and export stuff.
Well, in the beginning, it was the movie and art people who kind of first moved in, and then really not until maybe a year ago, there were like, cafes and restaurants and things like that. And so again, we were here in December, and now it's late May, and you can already see a lot more restaurants. Is it good or bad for the neighborhood? Having so much development. It's different, but like, it's trendy, it's popular.
Yeah, I would say it's like both sides. I mean, it's good that it's like everyone knows about like our area, like in my hometown. People knows about like, oh, we got the really good areas in this area. But like, I would say at the same time, also the bad thing is like, I would say because of the cafe and the food, it's really like for like a tourist spot, right? So which means like the price is a bit high in my opinion. So basically, if I'm walking around here for finding food, I'm not really like going to the cafe that much because like the price is quite high, to be honest. But I would say like for like the overall for environment, it's like so much better. Like everyone, I mean, after this road is getting trendy, I would say the government and like the I'm not sure the word to say, like the domestic stop, they come in here for like develop the road. For example, they just add the crossroad over there to make it easier for like crossing the road, because like in the past they don't have the crossroad in there. So yeah, that's what I see, like how it's changed.
Can I photobomb? Sorry. Thank you. In the 6 months since we filmed for the first time in Song Wat, life has changed for the residents of the neighborhood in ways both exciting and unpredictable. Pixie wasn't available when we came back to film, as he's been busy opening his third venue, a pizza place a few blocks to the east with the appropriate name of Kick, Chop, Slice. Tars Unlimited, we were happy to learn after filming, is not gone for good, just renovating to reinforce the old structure to make sure it stands for another generation. The two sisters who came home to try a crazy idea of making late-night dumplings, well, their shop is still thriving, their specialties maintaining a perfect 5-star review, even with big money places moving in all around. FV has seen a flow of coverage from Bangkok's trendsetters and influencers, and their concept of utilizing rare fruits and vegetables that might otherwise go to waste, well, that's an idea quickly catching on with the mainstream. And bookings at Hostel Irby are in high demand, with tourists fighting for rooms not because it's close to Chinatown, but because it's in Song Wat, the place to be in the new Bangkok. What do you feel like when you see this getting... Are you... Honestly, are you a little bit unhappy when people like me call you and say we're going to do a story? Do you almost want this to stay a secret? Are you worried?
No, I want this place to be like straight. Yeah, I want people to know this place. I actually want to have more business opening, even if bad or good, doesn't matter. But if this area turn out to be like a good street that people thinking about when they're looking for some place to go, that is what I want.
I like how they keep the aesthetic of the road, because like I feel like of course there are like a lot of like restaurant and new cafe it is, but they still keep in the same theme that is like still in the old town, the vintage town. They don't change to be like a modern, which is like really respectfully for the local people in my opinion.
ดีขึ้นหาก็มีคนก็มาช้อปปิ้งเดินเล่นชิมอาหารหลายหลากแล้วก็ท่องเที่ยวถ่ายรูปอะไรอย่างเงี้ยเป็นกิจกรรมมีการเอาพูดร้านค้าที่นี่เขาก็มีงานเรื่องเงินด้วยค่ะแล้วเด็กๆเขาก็ชอบตรงนี้ค่ะ
Well, you definitely have to come to Song Wat because it's new and it's very exciting now. Lots of things happening on the daytime, but nighttime nothing much. And this is one of the first few bar here. So come to see it before it's getting popular at night.
Subscribe to the channel for more from OTR. Thank you so much to everyone who supports us on Patreon. It really helps to keep us going. Find links below to our Patreon and social media, and we'll see you soon. This is like, we're having the funniest conversation right now because we're speaking like 10% English, 10% Thai, 10% Chinese, and like, what does that leave? 70% of us just kind of nodding and...
Yes, thank you. you do.
Oh, she's showing me pictures.
I noodle.
You make the fish balls?
Yes, fish ball need the king. They're the king.